Subcommittee. Today is Wednesday, February 1st. Can we call the roll, please?
Mr. Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Ms. Roderick?
Here. Salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. From what I understand, we don't have any citizens input. Okay, and so we will jump right into item number 1, which is our parent engagement by Parent Square and Power School Access.
Good evening, everyone. First, we'll talk about Parent Square, which is the packet that you have in front of you. Parent Square has been a phenomenal tool for us in the district. These are current numbers at the halfway point. We have 12,407 parents actively using the system. We have 10,217 that are contactable via either text or email. 131 in the complete district right now that are non-contactable, and the buildings are, again, working on those as we go. And there are 264 that have no contact info. However, some of that is from the initial data dumped from X2 into the system, so we are cleaning that up daily. A big stat that stands out, 8,640 parents are using the system for emails. 69% of those people opted to receive just emails. The staggering number is 98% of parents that have cell phones, 12,144 of them are receiving their messages via texts. So that's a staggering number. And the app itself, 5,234 parents, 42% of our district are using the app. So what we're planning on doing now is getting more people to use the app, so there'll be an ad campaign going out into the buildings with the Sims team in the buildings. Some videos in 3 different languages, some links so that we can get more people using the app. And we're hoping that this time next year we're at 85 to 90%. This tool has been phenomenal. The thing that I like about this vendor is they're constantly asking us for suggestions on how to make their product better. Something that we've never had with School Messenger in the past. And we are in the process right now of polling the internal staff, employees, to see what we can do to make Parent Square better, because there are still a few people that want to go back to that Remind software that we were using. The biggest consensus there was they just like some basic PD on how to understand how to use Parent Square. And it's more on the para level and the elementary school level. The high school and middle school levels are using this tool phenomenally, and there are a few elementary schools that are just, there's one in particular, Laterno uses it quite a bit. They're the highest usage of schools. The data is pretty self-explanatory. I don't know if there are any specific questions. The tool is excellent, we love it, and we look forward to continue using it next year.
If I can just add, those videos are complete in 3 languages. So we've partnered with Fred TV, recorded them, and they've been edited. We were just going to look at a final view of them, and they're good to go.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
Just, Scott, real quick, I know in the beginning of the year, it was a rough start with this. And now we're in February, and I know some parents did, complain to me, and I'm sure to other members of the school committee and to superintendent. How's been the response so far with the parents? Have they?
Is this Power School or Parent
You're
Square?
talking about
I'm sorry, yeah, Power School.
Yes.
I haven't, I haven't.
With the text message and being able to go on there and look at all the,
So Parent Square does not have access to Power School. They're 2 separate systems. So Parent Square is our communication platform. Some of the schools are using Parent Square to send out grades, because you can attach the grades to Parent Square, but most of the schools are just using Power School, and that was my next.
Okay, that's fine, but I'm just curious, like, how are they doing now with it? I mean,
Both systems are talking now.
Right.
I mean, the biggest lift was Power School was new to us, and we had to get those 2 systems to talk. They talk now nightly, so
Right.
as there are updates in the main office, hey, could you please take this email off, add this email, it's being done nightly now.
because it just seems like Power School wise, the parents have really, like, been, embraced it.
Well, they have, and that,
And
yeah.
it seems to be working out really, really well.
They are, so.
In
and
the
I-
beginning, it didn't. but
In the beginning, it was.
really rough.
And again, 20 years of a product, we
Yeah.
went to a new product, but if you look at the next page, we can go right into the Power School. We only rolled out the app to middle, high, and RPA and Stone to start. We have not done that to the elementary schools yet. We're in the process of starting that, because remember, we use standard-based report cards. They didn't talk very well with Parent Square, so we had to basically design that. So now that we've designed that, we've gotten some feedback from the elementary schools, we're gonna start to roll out that app to the elementary parents in the coming weeks. But something that I just think is staggering, today alone, average parents a day, just over, 83 parents a day at Durfee. 5,208 sign-ins December 1st to February 1st. Talbot, 2,000 plus. Morton, almost 4,000. So you see the bigger schools are using it, and now the catch on to Lord, Cuss, it's starting to go up. You'll notice RPA and Stone is much lower, but our enrollment there is much lower. I was actually impressed to see that there are more parents using the app than they are the web portal. However, there are still parents that want to use the web portal, so if you look at it, 418 parents per day, if they're sitting at their desk at work, are logging into Power School to check on their students. Attendance, grading. We've actually had some calls here at the central office. I check my students' grades every day. Hey, this one's wrong. What do? We send them to the office. The office works with them. The buy-in has been much better. It is so nice to have a product where parents can check their students' information daily, because in X2 we didn't have that type of app. There have been hiccups with Power School, but we're getting to the point where we're getting more comfortable with it. The parents are getting more comfortable with it. The staff are getting more comfortable with it. Now we're going into, the second half of the year, so I anticipate elementary grading gets a little bit easier, progress reports get a little bit easier, but Mr. Michael Isaac and his team will get an email, hey, you think we could change this about it? We're not making major changes to the structure, but little tweaks here and there on the progress reports, for example. We were able to figure out a way to take those progress reports, dump them into Parent Square, and send them out via Parent Square. So now people had it right on their phone instantaneously. They got an email that said, your son's or daughter's progress report is ready to view. So we're using those tools effectively together, and the hope is, as we get used to Power Schools moving forward, we'll be able to do that much more and leverage the software that much more, in the future.
So we've also translated for Power School, in Power School, the progress reports in 3 languages. So that's completed.
And that's another thing that Mr. Michael Isaac and his team are working on. We're working on now translating a lot of the common documents, because it was such a lift from January to June to get us live for September. Now we're able to say, okay, this form here, we really want this in 3 languages, so we're going back, working with PACE, and we're translating those forms and uploading them into Power School. So we're getting there. And like I have said to all the committee through the months that we've been doing this, it's a slow process, but we're finally getting to a point where a lot of our stuff is in there. Our team is more comfortable with it, end user more comfortable with it. And again, there are gonna be hiccups,
Yeah.
We had an outage this week. It was an outage in Massachusetts. We unfortunately have to roll with those punches. That actually, we were sitting here talking before the meeting, and something I never thought of is if we needed to get communication to people, we have Parent Square. We get all that data dumped into Parent Square, and I never thought about it. So now we have some options. Stuff that we can plan for disaster, disaster planning if one system or the other were to temporarily go down. So that's something that I have to work on with my team in the future.
Yeah, no, that's good. I just want to make sure the Power School is getting
Definitely
improved.
getting used.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions?
No, this is really good. I would just really like to see how it goes throughout the year and updates. As you said, I know this takes time, especially when you're doing anything, especially when it comes to technology. But great job.
Thank you.
Do we plan on moving it to the elementary school parents?
We're working on that process as we speak. We needed to get through that standard-based report card piece. Now that we have, now we're gonna look at pushing it out to everyone
Okay.
else.
Anything else on that? Alright, so we will,
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
we will look at our item number 2, our community engagement plans.
So we continue to work with our, Maria, did you want to start? I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
with our community facilitators. So we meet with them monthly, and we have rolling agendas with documents attached to it, so resources for families, and really creating these positions so that everything they do, at the core of everything they do, is family engagement. So if they're helping out with phone calls to families for attendance, they're engaging these families and offering them different opportunities to come into the school, you know, and really engage in their students' education. They're also having the communications about Power School and Parent Square, just to make sure that they're connected if they need any help with that, and talking them through that. So we have these little step-by-step sheets in native languages, so they're helping them through that. So we've really gotten a lot of families that were not connected previously, and just watching those numbers rise. So we do, at our monthly meetings, we do look at the stats for each school to make sure that we're seeing an increase in engagement in those communication apps. We also continue to plan different events. We've had quite a bit of family workshops that are district-wide. We're finding that we're not getting a lot of engagement at those. We're getting a lot more engagement when schools do school-based events. So, you know, that's what we're encouraging more and more of. For example, a couple of weeks ago, Spencer Borden did a little workshop around helping students with their homework. And then we came in, Pace came in, and we did bingo for books with the kids. We provided dinner for the families, and we had, you know, the cafeteria was filled. So it was a great success. So just building off that and really providing those opportunities for any other events that schools are doing. We have quite a few planned. So we sort of just keep track. We have a tracking system for what each school's doing, and then all the community facilitators, if they need translation services at these events, they put it out there. So it's sort of just whoever's available will come in from other schools. So community facilitators are helping each other at their events, so we have more language capacity. We've also did, last week or the week before, we did Corey's Cause at Durfee, and we had translation services through, so we had people there to translate, and then we had capability through earphones, a system that we have. So we were able to, for any family that needed translation, whatever the presenter was presenting, we were able to translate into other languages, talking to the headphones, and the families could hear it. So that was our first time doing that.
Yeah.
How was that received?
So I would have a transmitter, and families who were listening in Portuguese would have a receiver. So it's a headphone with a receiver, and they talk to each other. So Spanish would be like on channel 1, Portuguese on channel 2. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's
that is
kinda
cool.
Yeah. So we're hoping to use that more district-wide, and offering that for more
And
events.
where has that been used? I mean, what schools or what?
So
Is it just-
so it's been used before in LPAC meetings.
Okay.
So we've asked the MLL department for permission to use that equipment at our meetings. So, you know, they gladly said yes. So we tested it out.
It's important to note also that one of the things that the community it's nice to have the community facilitators in buildings, but one of the things that they've done is piggybacked with, so, you know, parent-teacher conferences or open house, they also have a workshop going or an activity or an event happening at the same time, so that people are already there, they can take advantage of whatever it is that's being offered. So they're working with the school to kind of give people more than one reason to go to the school and to do something, because I think sometimes nobody wants to go in for a half-hour meeting, right? But if you have a worthy workshop or something, they're going to be more likely to do that. So the community facilitators have been that bridge, which is, it really has been a good, you know, Cindy really has been what that's done is build a community within the community facilitators. I love that they're working together, helping each other out. Oh, I have this going on in my school. Oh, I'll go and help you translate. So it's really created a team so that they're collaborating together to build some community engagement.
And then the success is at one school, they'll now bring it to other
Mhm.
schools. So they're not reinventing the wheel, they're, just sharing ideas. They're so excited with, rolling out, different ideas. For example, I think it's Green is doing a family photo shoot night. How exciting is that, right? That's a great idea, so it's things like that that I think are gonna go a long way, the more and more comfortable we get with each other and work together and, run these events. So.
Now, have you, you did the book bingo at Spencer Borden, you said, and the cafeteria was crowded, packed in?
Yeah, so we've done those for
It's a
years.
big draw.
Yeah, it's a big draw,
Yeah.
but,
Do you try that in other schools as well? Is that
yes, and it's always successful, but
Yeah.
we really wanted to, we knew that would draw in families, but we wanted to add that educational component for families. So while they're going for bingo for books, they're getting, some education
Yeah.
as well on how they can better support their students during, homework.
Mhm.
So just really trying to be very thoughtful about all those events so that we're providing, double and triple opportunities
No, that's
in one
fantastic.
night.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are we with staffing with the community facilitators?
So we still have some openings.
Couple of schools,
Yeah, so I think it's 2 positions
yeah,
that we
2
have.
schools that
Yeah.
are still
Okay.
in the midst of, which
It's
is
actually-
very good.
Yeah, it's actually 3 because Watson and,
They share.
and Tansy share.
They share one.
Yeah.
Gotcha, yeah.
Sylvia still has.
So when
No,
it's like,
Sylvia, we
They got
we
theirs,
have
yeah.
a-
so the places where you don't have the community facilitator, the others help out in the other schools?
So,
or-
yeah, so what we've done is just kind of reached out to the school and let them know, if there's any events that, you want to run, PACE will support them.
Okay.
So I know that we were working with Tansy to do a bingo for books with the workshop as well. So my staff will go there, we'll go to any
Yeah.
school, but, just offering that and then being more thoughtful when we do some of our district-wide events as well, just inviting them in.
So you said Tansy and Watson, but that's one position because they
That's
share
one
one,
position.
and then you said Lauren was the other one?
Mhm.
Okay. So it's really 3 of our schools, but
2
we have 2 positions. Okay. Any other questions on that piece? You have a thought though, because I always have a thought, right? So we've done some of those district-wide things and we really haven't had great attendance. I know that a lot of times those topics are more generalized, right? They're important for everybody. Could we do, it's just a thought, some kind of rotation? So at CUS, they're gonna have, so it'll be at CUS, just for CUS, where we'll present that topic, and then the next month we'll take that same topic and go to the next school with it. So for some of those bigger, kind of more general, let's talk about the entire school, so that way people are getting the message.
So that is what we offer to the schools
Okay.
now. So we did tell them, you know what, we live and learn. How can we make this better, right? So now we've told our community facilitators, go back to the school. If these are, we still have a menu of topics that we've come up with as a group, collective group that we thought, just gathering from parent feedback and school feedback. What are topics that are hot that we feel families are looking for? What can we do? But let's offer them at a smaller scale and maybe double up and offer something else. So maybe that might be the bingo for books, or it could be something else. One of the schools is doing a dance, so the kids will be in the auditorium, gym dancing, and there's going to be some workshops for families or some education for families, and then families can join them. So just really trying, there's a lot of cultural nights throughout, if I'm looking through, the schools, which is something that we really wanted to push. So that's all in the works, and they're just bouncing ideas off each other and using some of the same resources. So, yeah. Absolutely.
Big fan of that position.
Work smarter.
Work smarter, not harder.
It's a good, it was a good investment.
Yeah.
Those positions were a good
Yeah.
investment.
No, I was talking to a family the other day and they actually mentioned the community facilitator at their school. And it was just sort of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna call so-and-so because,
Right.
you know, I'll just call so-and-so, they'll be able to get me that information. So it's nice to know that the families are feeling connected to those folks as well. So it's not just, we're putting on events, because we know that that's just not, that's not what parent engagement looks like across the board, right? Sometimes families are not gonna be able to come, but they know that they can call this person and we're in really good shape.
Right, and building that capacity and the position, what it looks like in one school should be very similar to all schools. So really defining what their roles are and what they're doing. So whatever they're doing, how can we connect that, with family engagement? How can that task also engage the family? So they've also partnered with our attendance officers and school adjustment counselors, so doing home visits.
So that's a good segue. Does anybody have any other question on the community facilitator part specifically?
No.
All right, cool, so we will jump right into attendance.
Yeah, so partnering with the attendance officers as well, doing those home visits. I think, a lot of the work that we want to do, the next couple of months is on that team approach, right? We're looking at, within our district, we've met as an attendance task force within. And what we've decided that before we take it out, we're gonna really do a deep dive into what we're doing at a district in all of our schools. And really comparing what the best practice is, what teams are really bringing back the best results, and sharing that throughout all of our schools so that, we're this united front, and what's happening in one school is happening in another school, and just really building off the successes of each school. Once we do that, our next steps are going to be to implement this in all of our schools, and then bringing our community partners in, but in a different way than what we had before. So, for example, 1 month we'll invite our state agencies, so our DCF and court system, and really being very targeted around how do we work as a unit to support each other in this work. Looking at systems, what happens when we send a student to court? What does that look like? What do you need from us so that when you do your stuff at the court, it's impactful and meaningful so that we get the best results? So really being targeted in that way. For example, another month might be meeting with all of our pediatricians. That's a partnership that we value a lot, and we have a great partnership with our pediatrician offices, but we can always improve on that. So really having those targeted conversations on, who the point people might be, that if we need something from a pediatrician's office, we have that point person. We can call them and they can call us, and we can, really work together to better support a student to get them in school.
I would say our big takeaway, we know that certainly our attendance has improved from last year to this year, and it continues to improve. I mean, last month we had, our average attendance was probably in the mid-80s. We are creeping up, we're at 90%, 89, 90%, and the goal is to be at 93 by the end of the year, we hope.
And we're not making excuses, but last month we also saw huge surges in flu and in stress.
I was just gonna say, there's different reasons.
COVID, right, so when we look at those numbers, I don't want people to hear that and hear, oh gosh, like nobody was coming to school. It was bad, and it wasn't just here, it was across the state.
Oh, I will totally agree with that, because I was gonna say, there are many different reasons why kids don't come to school.
Right.
We also had, a large stretch of rainy days. Like, we're not talking about just drizzling, but we talked about storms, right? So that impacts kids coming to school too. When we have, a storm, we always know that attendance is gonna suffer. We still tell people, if you're sick, you need to stay home. We have to retrain people. How sick do you
What
have
does
to
sick
be?
mean?
Exactly,
Right.
what kind of sick or whatever. We certainly want people to take care of themselves, but if they feel like they're sick to the point where they're just gonna be passing it around, then we have to trust parents to make a good judgment, right? Because ultimately, they know their child better than us. But certainly, and we have to develop good habits, again, right? Consistent habits. Kids got out of the habit of coming to school consistently, et cetera. So we're working on all of that, and we're doing our due diligence as schools to reach out to families and figure out why their child's home, how we can help, what our piece is in it. But I think that when we met as a team, we had some attendance officers at the table at the task force, we had some principals and district staff, et cetera, and we were looking at, okay, so I think that one of the big takeaways was we had to reflect and say, the first step, everybody agreed that we need to involve the community, have a task force, but we said it needs to look different, right? We're not gonna meet monthly just for the sake of meeting and say we have a task force. We need to have a purpose, right? And in order for us to have that purpose, first of all, we have to do a data dive. We have to look at practices across the board. What are we doing, what's working, what hasn't worked, and see what shifts need to be made. And then invite to the table the people with a purpose at when they need to be there, instead of just saying, we're just gonna have a meeting for an hour and say, okay, we're gonna report out. That's not what what collaboration is, right? So we're trying to be thoughtful about how we resurrect the task force and how we utilize it to support our kids and support our families in getting kids to school. So, I would say we're headed in the right direction, but there's work that we need to do in the meantime to get to where we need to be. You don't just set a goal, meet it without doing all the legwork, because that's not gonna be sustainable.
Right.
We just need to make sure we put the systems in place that are gonna support that goal and help us to meet it and exceed it and move on to the next level of the work. So I think that we've done good work, and I'm excited about the work that we'll continue to do. Our attendance officers have been working closely with principals. I did make that decision because they were I'll say, like, they initially had been supported by the SEL person. As you know, that position's not filled yet. I can't do that justice. They needed to work closely with people, and really they should be working with the people that they're closest with, right? So if we have an attendance officer that works in 2 schools, those 2 principals are the point people, and they're part of that school-based team, the support team, et cetera. So we met with the principals, talked about that, and really talked about the pros of that. So the attendance officers are working closely at each school level with the principals. The principals will collaborate and support those attendance officers. And hopefully what we come away with is consistent practices across the board and a tiered approach, right? Because everybody has a role in it, but my role is going to be different than the attendance officer's role or the principal's role or the community facilitator's role, right? Because everybody jumps in when they're supposed to. Right, so it's hopefully an intentional, system that we're going to put in place that is going to yield in positive results.
Well, I think it's the only way that change happens is when we're approaching it with some kind of intentionality, as opposed to just putting things in place for the sake of putting things in place.
Right.
Anybody have questions on attendance right now?
Are there, like Maria, are there any gateway cities that have a very good absenteeism rate throughout the state here?
We can say that we've looked at our sister schools that have similar populations, and they're all around the same where we are, and they all suffer the same pains that we do. I think that although we do reach out. I know at the high school they reached out to New Bedford, to Brockton. They're comparing the high schools, et cetera. So it's not unique to us. I think there are different factors that weigh in. We do have at times a transient population that lends itself to it. We also, we know that I said before that when it's bad weather, we're gonna, I'm anticipating Friday will be a difficult day, right? It's gonna be cold more Saturday but the weather's already changing, right? So I think that if you're gonna have a storm, we expect it, we know that that's gonna happen. But we need to keep at it, and we learn from each other. I'm part of the Urban Superintendents Network, so we talk about the stuff together. This is not unique.
I think it'd be good, that's good that you're talking to other gateway cities in the state, because I think that's important, because we're very similar in size and diversity, culture, everything. So I think that's good, and I'm glad you're doing that. And I mean, I think, you know, that's good that you've started discussions with it. And how many meetings have you had so far?
Two.
Two
We've had
meetings?
two
Okay.
meetings. We have
All right.
another one scheduled.
Yeah.
So I think it's, like, I know that it took longer to get it up and running
Yeah.
than we anticipated, but as we all know, stuff happens.
Yeah. No, I mean,
But-
you want to do it like right.
Yeah, we
you know?
wanna do
So
it
I
right.
think by taking the time and doing
Mhm.
what you're doing now is a very, very good, big step. So, yeah, I
And
look
by
forward to
doing
it.
that, you know, we're purposeful in our full-day PD, so
Yeah.
we're bringing in, you know, some of our goals in this work into that PD, so we're doing that work and it's gonna be consistent throughout. So, I think sometimes, you know, that pre-work before you launch something is so critical,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, yes.
So, yeah, we're
Mhm.
excited about that.
I think it's easy in a district this size
Yeah.
to sort of just put things in place without really planning and being intentional and purposeful about how that's gonna
Yeah.
look, because we have challenges, but, you know, it's not, we have challenges because we're a very large district, and that kind of comes with the territory, just our population in general, so we have to be mindful of that, and so I think the more that we can be intentional about things.
And a lot of that was really reflecting pre-COVID.
Yeah.
That year, we were in such a good place with attendance, we had done so much work, so really diving back into that and thinking back at that time, what were we doing that was working really well, and what wasn't, what could we improve upon? So that was a lot of the work we did these meetings, so that when we started back up, we're very purposeful and, you know, not reinventing the wheel,
Yeah.
right? Just really looking at our systems, because we had more consistent systems in place. So looking at our systems and then building off those.
So just one other thing on that, you know, we have the attendance cars. I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but, you know, I live in the city, obviously, and I work in the community. I've seen them, and maybe it's the same one, I don't know, but I've seen them out and about
Yep.
way more often now
Yeah.
than I have before.
I would say, I agree, they're used a lot more, probably, Talbot and Henry Ward probably are
I
the
was
front
gonna say,
runners.
those are
And-
the two sides of the city.
And
yeah.
Morton also uses it a lot, but I will say that they're the front runners that they use mostly. They think nothing of getting in a car, going to pick up a student, dropping off a student if need be. Obviously, it doesn't take place of, you know, we're not gonna do every day transport
it's a
student, but
bridge.
emergencies,
Mhm.
exactly, it's emergencies arise, somebody, oh, well, they missed the bus, so they couldn't get there, okay, tell them to be ready, we'll be right there. So they are used a lot more. I think that if you really, like, our people make a lot more home visits than people realize from any school. They are there. Many years ago, you wouldn't even think twice. Like, if you talk to a Kate Cobb, and she'll tell you, she herself with her sack or whatever will think nothing of going to homes.
Mhm.
That probably didn't happen years ago.
Right.
But people are, you know, connecting with families and trying to support families. We just need to make sure we work with our families, right? Because it's not our job to judge why or why not kids aren't in school, because we know there's always a reason why, right? Our job is to say, okay, how do we help you clear that,
Yep.
you know, obstacle, so that we can get your child to school, because we know if they're not in school, they're missing out on
Mhm.
learning. So that's our job to do. So I think that people are doing a lot more of that.
I bring that up about the cars because I know that was a concern a while back, that people, we had paid for them and they weren't being used, and they were kind
That's
of
true.
sitting in parking lots. But I can only speak anecdotally, obviously, I don't have
Mhm.
numbers or anything, but I've seen them driving around way more frequently, and it's funny because it has been in the Flint and in the south end of the city. Those are the
We
two sides
moved
I've
them
seen.
around, right? Initially, you're absolutely right. We weren't utilizing them like we should have. So we have moved them, put one in the north end, one in the south end, so there's one that, if you drive by Morton, it's always parked outside Morton. One that's in the south end at Henry Ward that is left there. The principals know where the cars are. We have a Google sheet that if they need to use it, they'll go and they'll sign out the car. They'll say, oh, I have my sack going there to pick up the car. So we have a system where they pick up the car and do whatever they need to do. But we strategically try to place them in different areas in the city
So they're more
so that they're
accessible.
more accessible to people, because they used to be right at Durfee.
Yeah.
And it was easy to just say, hey, I'm at Laterno, I need the car, I'm gonna go to Henry Ward and pick it up.
Right.
So we've got one at the north, south, east, and,
We have 3 cars, so they're in different places, yeah, but I would say, the Morton, Talbot, and Henry Lord is where they're stationed, or sometimes Durfee,
Yeah.
wherever.
excellent.
So all of that is helping, which is good. Like, we're not where we want to be, but we're slowly chipping.
We're inching our way, and I don't think that's unique, even to districts that didn't have the numbers that we have. Everybody's trying to recoup,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So I would
absolutely.
say all districts are trying to recoup and get themselves to with the way they were before this interruption occurred.
And superintendent, I know you look at it every day, the superintendent, the attendance. Is it like for the past maybe, I don't know, 4 months, is it trending?
Yeah, it's trending upwards.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the December, and for instance, the December, we have a spreadsheet that we keep track of. So in December, we do it daily, and then the weekly average. And as I said before, the December average hovered around 85, mid-80s, and we are at 89, 90 average now. So, I think that the weather, or, if you have a half day or something, will
Yeah.
impact. But we are trending upward. We do have a couple schools that are consistently low that we need to get those numbers up, and obviously average it all out, and that impacts our numbers. But for the most part, most schools are hovering around 90 or above, with the exception of 1 or 2, at least 2 schools that are not.
And I would assume too that the schools that are sometimes, are maybe consistently low, we are, we're gonna concentrate on every school, but we're kind of putting an emphasis on obviously those.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, so, I mean, and it's no secret, we struggle with RPA,
Yeah.
with their attendance, et cetera, so that's something that needs to be a focus area to get those numbers up and get those kids in school.
Any other questions on that? All right. Then our last agenda item is just to revisit what our goals were from earlier in the year.
So, when we talk about family engagement, our goals were to, we really wanted to do a district-wide event monthly. We've done that this far, but again, I think like at our last one, when we came back together as a unit, we really decided that we really need to do more school-based, so we're really changing that approach. We're still gonna do some district-wide events, like when we did the trunk or treat, that was so successful. So we wanna do a couple of events like that, where it's district-wide, really bringing in the community partners, and doing that together with the community. So next year, that event's gonna be way bigger than even this year. But we wanna do another one in the spring. So, we also want to continue to do our, Welcome to K events throughout the summer. That's always, that's a goal that we're going to continue to do and really beef up every year. So, building up these community facilitators was a huge goal of mine as well. And that's, it's been, we're growing, as a district, but really taking the time to dedicate with each one and what it looks like at each school, because each school has different needs. So we want to be respectful of those needs, and we want them to use those facilitators in those positions as they need, but still having that, marrying the two, right? So having that core at the center of everything that they do, of engaging families while still supporting the schools in what they envision these goals to be. So definitely, having a lot of conversations with principals, going out to schools to really, how can I better support them in your vision of what your school needs? Because they're really the experts of their schools, and I need to be very respectful of that, right? I might have a vision of what, I want, but they might have a little bit of a different vision of what they need right now. So we might get there someday, but right now it's, initially it was getting as many families as possible with Parent Square, because that's the number one, goal, is to have that communication, that ability every single day with our families to really get them to, the easy way to communicate with them in their native language. Being very thoughtful about that in every event that we have to provide resources so that we can communicate with every single family. Training people on Lionbridge to start using Lionbridge more and more. Actually, just today we were playing with them with our iPads at the Pace Center so that we're ready for high registration season. So we're using those iPads now for Lionbridge. Although I have language capacity, there are days that we have, during those busy season, more parents that speak different languages than language capacity.
Can you use Lionbridge?
So now we can use
Very good.
Lionbridge, and we're setting up our iPads to do that, in real time right there. So we can do everything on their kiosks. So we literally can take the kiosk with us, wherever the family is. They want to be outside so the kids can play out in the grass while we're registering. We can do that too. So really trying to be thoughtful and planning for those busy seasons too. So not just waiting for the busy season to implement stuff, we're planning. So we've gotten better with taking notes during those busy seasons of what's happening that's not good or that we can improve upon, and coming up as a collective unit to plan for those times. We can improve upon this, we can make that more efficient, we maybe can eliminate this piece of paper that's going to take more time to fill out, we'll do it electronically. So stuff like that we're really trying to get the feedback from families. There was one form that families would get aggravated when they'd fill out sometimes, and they'd complain to my staff. So let's eliminate that form and put it into the enrollment so it's quick. So just little steps like that. SEL is a huge goal, was a huge goal of ours. So I think there's been some great growth in what we've done, and I think Claudia has done. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you brought into schools this year that's been
Sure. So
incredible?
one of the things, just to start on that, we've had a partnership with Family Services, and part of that partnership is that they are providing groups to all of our schools where they're going to be providing, each school will get three sets of different groups. The first group, so it's already started throughout our schools. So the first set of groups are on, it's on just self-regulation type skills, and then the other two groups at the schools will be what the school needs. So we started in every school, it's self-regulation. It's clinicians from Family Services who are going to be running those groups. And then again, when it's time to sit down and talk about what's the next group's going to look at, like at each school, the schools will have the autonomy to say, this is what we need from you, these are what we're looking for the groups. In addition to that, there's groups happening throughout all of our schools. I'm super excited. One of the meetings I had this morning was with all of our SEL liaisons that we have as a district, which I'm super excited about, and really checking in to see what's it looking like at all of the buildings. And they're all running groups, mindfulness groups, self-regulation groups, conflict resolution groups, and social skills groups. So a lot of that preventative work is happening, in addition to just triaging some of those calls that they're getting in from schools, which is what we intended with those positions, which is nice to see.
One of the best investments we've made.
Oh, I'm so happy to.
Facilitators and the
I agree.
SEL
Those were
liaisons.
two
100%.
of the best investments we've made.
And I'd like to say as well too, that's the response I'm getting from the school adjustment counselors as well too, where we have them in the middle schools. They're like they've noticed such a difference, where these liaisons are doing a lot of the triaging and pre-work and tracking some of the students that they've identified, where the SACs are able to do some of that other work. That's a huge, tremendous support is what I'm getting as
And the
feedback.
principals are being so thoughtful about how to use them.
Yeah.
So it is relieving some of that pressure off the SAC so they can provide the Tier 3 support, which is exactly what we wanted to happen. So that was a good suggestion, and it has been nothing short of a good thing for
Yeah.
schools.
And at the
You know how
elementary,
I feel about those, so,
Yeah.
you know, the more we can have.
so at the
Don't
elementary.
worry. They'll be asking for more.
Right after this meeting.
No, I already know that there's gonna be some requests.
Are we fully staffed on those, or are we still?
So Morton currently has an opening for theirs.
Yeah.
I'm part of the interview with them as well too, so we've been interviewing, so we're waiting for
Do
Morton.
they have any, or is this?
They have two.
They have
Yeah.
two.
They have the
Which
third
is their
one.
third one,
That,
okay.
and I think that's really nice. So when the middle school's onboarded 3 per, so it's in essence 1 attached
Per
to each
grade
grade, which makes it so wonderful. So that it's tiered and it's targeted as well too, working as a team. So for, let's say if there's a kiddo that has a support plan or behavior support plan or needs that extra supports that are identified in working with the school adjustment counselors or ABs, they are able to do a lot of that work now with the kiddos as well too. So they're seeing a huge improvement with that. So I'm really excited that we're getting at the middle schools and
Yep.
love to see that grow.
How about at the elementary level?
Well, we have, funny you should ask, we do have
Funny you
some in
ask
some
that.
schools,
Funny.
and
And I'm sure
and
more.
that, we do have, I did have spoken to some principals who also want to add. I think in particular, when you have a school that has a large cluster of special populations, or if they're in a larger school where they need that additional support, the good part is that's what they're going to, right, and asking for that position. So I do think that that's growing, and we're seeing some requests come in, so I do think that we'll see some, especially some of the larger schools.
And I'm
ask
sure you'll
for
get
some.
more.
Yeah, after tonight, I'm sure.
And I think the more that the schools that are using them well can talk, hey, I'm all for the SEL, let's,
Yeah.
Look at the looks.
Right.
right? Because it's working,
Right.
that's the feedback that we're getting, it's helpful.
It is, the feedback has been great, and we've been able to onboard really talented people to do that work as well too. And I think the fact that we were able to say, look, this is the criteria, this is what we'd like it to be a pipeline into people who eventually want to be a school adjustment counselor. And some of them are on track to get their licenses and doing that. But we meet as a group as well too, so it's like, okay, what groups are you running? How, you know, how's it, would it, give us some of those topics, let's share resources, let's share ideas. So that is happening as well too, which is really nice to see within the schools. At the elementary school, again, we don't have as many as, there's a nice system in place with our middle
Yes.
schools, where these SEL liaisons and the school adjustment counselors working collaboratively at the elementary school, checking in with their, you know, she's running the zones of regulation with the little kiddos during lunch bunch groups, and just in any capacity that she can, which is really nice to see. So I'm really huge support, and we're seeing the difference. At the high school level as well too, all of our school adjustment counselors are running groups now as well too, which I'm super excited about. We have anxiety groups happening during the day. We have young men's empowerment group run during the day. We have, I'm trying to think of all the other ones.
Social skills, newcomers.
Newcomers. So we're really fortunate at the high school where we have school adjustment counselors who speak different languages. So we have 2 separate groups going on, right, in the sense of newcomer for students who are Spanish speaking, Portuguese speaking, or other languages as well too. And it's just hearing how it's going sounds amazing as well too.
And
So-
planning a parent component of that too,
Yeah.
after school, so that's
Oh,
exciting.
by one of the school adjustment counselors. And at the elementary level, I mean, they are running groups on a regular basis or pushing in as well too. So there's a lot of the push-in, which I love seeing that. The pushing into the classrooms and helping with teaching some of those lessons, whether it's bullying lessons or any SEL lesson or any uptick that a teacher might be noticing is happening in the classroom, having that supportive person coming in and doing a whole group lesson, which is amazing. We had all of our schools, again, we had done the MARC bullying, and at the middle and high school, they're also doing our new leadership program, right, which is going really well in our advisory programs at middle and high school. It's sequenced in the way that, I had it up here, so the sequence of, okay, So the way we had it sequenced, the scope and sequence for the leadership program, right? We have it so that way February, there's a lot of conflict management type of lessons, and then we go into social responsibility in March, and then April upstander, which is that bullying again too, because when we mindful of like when the days get longer, the weather gets nicer, kids are hanging out, some of that hanging out outside brings in some conflict into the buildings, and making sure that those lessons are really tied into what we've seen historically with upticks in our buildings as well too.
I had a question and I went out.
That's quite a few. Obviously, we all know this work is important, and I'm glad that you're talking about this, because I don't think people get how important it is sometimes when we're discussing this. Just a few suggestions and a few things. Like with a lot of the events and groups and stuff we do, they're a way to provide like any data on the outcomes of some of the stuff that we're doing, just so we can make sure that for one, we're growing, right? For two, just to make sure when we collaborate with some of the community partners that we can actually educate them as well, because obviously there are students and there are kids, and how do we just get it out to the public to train. 'Cause we're doing a lot of great work, and we talk about this all the time, and I can say it till I'm blue in the face, I don't think people realize how important it is, some of the work that we're doing. So if we had that, testimonials and stuff like that for some of the principals, so when we're going out and we have our community liaisons and they go into places, that could, it could turn into a teaching moment for them, where they're actually teaching some of these parents, so they're bringing some of the parents in and doing some of these things. But this is all great work, everything that I'm hearing, and I've seen it, so I know that it's transformative.
And I have to say, I'm always really, really proud to tell people, we have 58 school adjustment counselors. So that speaks volumes to the fact that we are really working and supporting our kids, our whole kid, right?
Yeah.
So I always tell people I'm so proud that I can say we have 58 school adjustment counselors throughout our 16 schools, which is a great number, but it's great support that's happening, but now we're getting these different layers as well too, that's supporting our kids at any capacity. And then speaking to home visits, I know our school adjustment counselors, they love doing our home visits. I'm always offering to go with them as well too, because I love it. That's how you learn about the family and the student. You meet them where they're at as well too. I think it's such an important thing to do when you're connecting with the family, and the barriers are gone when you're doing those home visits. So that's a lot of the work school adjustment counselors are doing, is meeting families and doing those home visits. I've driven in the cars before to go pick up a family or to go do whatever I needed to do, because that work is super important. And having those additional supports has lent it so that more of that work can happen as well too.
Well, we talk a lot about getting families into the school, but I don't think we always recognize that part of that work is also us getting out to the families, right? Where families are actually at, as opposed to them always having to come into the building.
Well, parent engagement doesn't mean that they have to be in the building.
Right, but
So
sometimes that's what we
accepting you
hear.
in their home
Right.
is an engaged
Absolutely,
parent that is
that's
willing
an
to
engaged
accept
parent.
you into their home.
The
Huge.
parents,
And I
So-
think that's the point that
Yeah.
a lot of people miss,
Yeah.
is that they're expecting exactly what you said, the opposite. So
the parent that's checking their grades
Exactly.
on Power School and saying, hey, this looks different from what I thought it was, and so who do I connect with? That's parent engagement. I think people sometimes forget that it's not just about the community events, which are
Right.
important,
Yeah.
right? They're necessary, and I think we need to do more of them, but it's not just about that.
I do agree that we probably, that's something we can walk away from tonight, is to set a goal and how we can quantify some of this work, right?
So
You bring up a
we
very good
actually
point.
had a meeting this afternoon with the tech department, because we're on it.
There you go.
They actually sent
Did
me
we
a
circle
sample of the report that they, the data report that, after talking with her and what we're envisioning, she sent me a sample, is this what you're looking for? So we're tweaking it a little bit, because it's
Yeah.
not exactly what I want.
Yeah.
But we're putting together packets for every single school on data, comparing last year to this year, and really celebrating what we've done different from last year to this year. So really looking at, did this make an impact? And I have to say, although the report that I seen was not exactly how I want it to look, it was exciting to see. So we're so hopeful about that, and hopefully, by the end of the week, we're gonna have, a really great presentation of what this looks like from last year to this year.
And that's why I also said
Totally.
testimonials, because it's the qualitative
No, yes,
part.
so
is
that
also
part,
important.
absolutely, I love
Because
that.
we can't measure
Yeah,
how a kid fared.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right.
yeah.
I think we
I
can
love
figure
that.
out how to survey and get some, I mean, I would like to, we should be, have regular,
And
even
how
if it's
great is
quarterly
that
or
for
whatever.
staff to hear too?
And that's
Like,
what I'm
that's
saying.
the biggest.
A lot of people don't realize how important the work
Yeah.
really is. And I've seen people in the trenches, I've seen people work, and I don't think people get enough credit for.
It's
for the work
empowering
that they
for
do.
them to
It
see.
is.
Yeah.
It truly is.
Yeah, some of the groups, and it's not consistent, so something we need to get back, there's that pre and post
Mm-hmm.
test, but I think, like Cindy was saying, one of the things we were looking at was where's our bullying data compared to last year's?
Mhm.
Where's our attendance compared to last year? Where's our conflicts, our fights
Yeah.
compared to last year? And just really comparing and looking at that, because, we're looking at, there's been a lot of groundwork that's been done last year into this year, but we've also added staff to do that work. We purchased an SEL curriculum that was specific to help address some of our concerns as well, too. And we're being, there's always room to grow, right? So we can't say it's perfect across all areas, but we're seeing the growth happen. And that makes me excited to see it happen. And, again, there's room to grow in certain areas, and I think being mindful of that and really looking at how do we make that, how do we share all of that across the school so that that growth is happening everywhere as well, too.
We're trending in a positive direction.
And even with what Bobby's saying about quantifying that data, you don't always have to just look at the bullying investigations or just look at the conflicts or the attendance. You can also look at, individual kids. How often is that individual kid, redacted, we don't need anybody's name, but if you have a kid that's constantly being pulled out of the classroom because of behavior issues or disruptions or whatnot, did those things go down, right? So is that kid actually able now to regulate in the classroom versus outside of the classroom? That's a huge win. And I don't think people always hear that kind of stuff either, that's equally as important as getting our overall numbers, right? If it made a difference for, I'm assuming that they're running groups with small targeted groups
Yes.
of kids and not whole classroom stuff.
Oh, they're doing both, right? So they're doing small groups, targeted kids, and they're doing sometimes push-in, whole classroom.
Yeah,
as
our
well,
folks are doing
depending.
the push-in, but when we're getting the community partners.
Oh, yes,
that
those are
we make,
targeted.
Those are targeted groups. So what did that look like for that group of kids, right? Did we see a difference in how many times they were sent to the office? Did we see a difference in how many detentions they got? I'm just making stuff up.
Sure.
What are our metrics to look at some of that stuff? Because I think when we can put that out there, then people can see, we know how important the work is, but I don't think everybody else always realizes that. So people like hard numbers. Can we combine that with some good, hey, this helped Johnny, it's always Johnny, right? This helped Johnny in the classroom, and this is, in his words, what was helpful for him.
I love that.
It's a goal.
Yes.
Okay.
We could do a whole thing and have our Friend TV kids help film some of that. Let's go for it. Any other questions on that? We're moving along. We're moving along to our goals. All right, any new business? No? Then we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion made.
Second.
We're adjourned.